welcome to the Comic Game Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and today I am here to talk about something that was introduced in the Deadpool and the Wolverine movie, which, by the way, is killing it at the box office. Honestly, by this time next week, it will have crossed the $1 billion mark. This movie is killing it. It will be by far the biggest rated R movie of all time. It's already on its way. This movie's already made more than both the previous Deadpool movies in half the fucking time. In 2 weeks, it's made more than the previous two Deadpool movies. It's already one of Marvel's biggest movies of the year. It's gotta be the MCU's biggest movie, like MCU itself, by itself, biggest movie since Doctor Strange, which almost made $1 billion. This movie's gonna clear $1 billion. And it's just gonna keep rolling, man. It's doing great money. I mean, I love the movie. I already gave my review of it. But what I'm here to talk about here is the movie introduced a concept. Now, there's been a few concepts introduced in the MCU. Alternate timelines, incursions, variants. I mean, a lot of things introduced since, in the multiverse saga. But with Deadpool and Wolverine, one of the complaints about the movie, and I've seen it, even though this complaint kind of irks me a little bit, I've said this many times before in many different videos, I don't know exactly what people want from the MCU. Because when I walked out of the theater from Deadpool and Wolverine, one of the thoughts in the back of my mind was something that also has been brought up, which is, you know what? I loved it. I had a blast with this movie. It's not as connective as you think it is. Honestly, it's a little bit like Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. One of the complaints was, as big and all the top as it really was an isolated story. And honestly, if you want to talk about the MCU in general, that is a lot of the MCU stuff. But the problem I have is, people ask for the MCU to be less connected. People ask to not have to do as much homework to just watch a movie. And then the MCU gives you that, and then you bitch about it. When they're too connected, you bitch about that. When it's not connected enough, you bitch about that. People just keep bitching. They don't know what they actually want. But one of the things that were introduced, which I'm hearing some controversy even about this, is the idea of anchor beings. Now, us comic book people would know that the concept behind anchor beings is very similar to the concept behind in the comics. There are characters like the Scarlet Witch who are important to their multiverse. Like they're like beings that are like unique. Like out of everyone in this universe, they are the most important person in this universe. At least in terms of the anchor beings from Deadpool and Wolverine. As they explained in the movie, anchor beings are people who are so important to their timeline that once they die, at the precise time that they die on the timeline, is when the timeline starts to die. Like, you gotta remember, which I've seen some people complain that doesn't make any sense, that how can you be an anchor being and then your timeline, if you die and your timeline dies. I'm like, dude, people are overthinking this. It is simple. Once the anchor being is born, like, anchor beings are born at different times in different worlds. I mean, that's how you can explain how some worlds look like they're in the 1940s, even though chronologically, like, they should be in the modern world, and why some worlds are in the futuristic, because the anchor being hasn't been born yet. Once the anchor being is born, and once the anchor being dies, that is when that universe will cease to exist. From that point on, from when the anchor being dies, the universe is starting to deteriorate until it's gone. And it may take thousands of years, but eventually it will go away. That's how it works. I don't know how people made it fucking complicated. But the big question is, and the biggest question coming out of the Deadpool movie, the only thing that it really set up is, who is the anchor being of the 616 Sacred Timeline universe? Who is the anchor being? Because we have to assume that there is one, right? And like, they played up the Sacred Timeline in Deadpool and Wolverine movie, like how important it is, and how much the TVA cares about that timeline above all the other timelines. Like, because at the end of Loki, what they came to the conclusion of is they're not gonna prune timelines. They're just gonna weave them together. Because once again, they had to kind of, I like how that they created this anchor being situation, because otherwise the assumption would be timelines just go on forever. But with the idea of anchor beings and these beings dying, it kind of gives a natural end to timelines. So theoretically, it can just kind of all be harmonious. Just like branches on a tree falling off. It doesn't mean the entire tree is dying, but branches fall off a tree. So I kind of like the anchor being thing, but it does bring attention to who is the anchor being of the main MCU timeline. Now, there are multiple ways to look at this, right? There could be because there's more, depending on who Marvel chooses to be the anchor being will completely dictate how this story should go, right? Because from a thematic standpoint, you could easily have the anchor being be Tom Holland Spider-Man. Now the problem is Sony. Like, if it wasn't for Sony, I feel like it would be easily Tom Holland Spider-Man. First of all, with the casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom, it feels like that is, like, I mean, it's set up for Tom, like, the thing is, the MCU were setting Spider-Man up to take the reins. Well, really, they were setting up Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and Captain Marvel to take the reins, but shit. Captain Marvel had a bomb. T'Challa died. So shit kind of went off the rails. But they have really been setting up Spider-Man to take Tony Stark's position in the MCU as the heart of the MCU, and he was doing a great job at it. The problem is Sony, the Sony of it all. How much can they rely on being able to use this character? Because, in all honesty, both the Avengers movies Spider-Man should be the lead. That connection with Tony Stark, the fact that there is a part of it that's like, I'm not going to say Captain America choosing Sam to take his shield-ish kind of thing going on with them, but, Happy said it in Far From Home. That one of the reasons Tony felt so comfortable sacrificing himself is because he knew Peter would be here. One of the reasons he even went on this stupid journey, this time heist in Endgame, and did all that shit was over Peter. Like, it was because of Peter. And you know what I mean? Because Tony was cool, he had his family, but he couldn't live with the fact that Peter wasn't here. So not only was Peter the big reason Tony decided to do what he did in the first place, but Peter to a certain extent was also the reason he was so comfortable making the self-sacrifice play, because he knew Peter would be around. In many ways, Spider-Man had been set up to kind of be the spiritual, not the literal, but the spiritual successor of Iron Man in the MCU. So Peter Parker having to face his mentor, Peter Parker having to face a man he once watched die, Peter Parker having to, and it's a difficult thing. Like, it does feel like the story is pretty much set up for that. But then you got to take a step back and go, there are other candidates. Doctor Strange, for instance. I mean, it's easy. It could easily be Doctor Strange. Benedict Cumberbatch will be in the MCU for a few more years to come, at least until his third movie. He's always been a team player. Doctor Strange as a character can be plugged into so many different things. With Doctor Strange, you can have almost, a Coulson-like character on steroids, because he can just show up anywhere. So it could easily be Doctor Strange. It's already sort of been proven that he's even the best version of Doctor Strange in the multiverse. So it could easily be Doctor Strange. Also, it could be this version of Iron Man. Perhaps, but I feel like I don't want to think that. I've seen some people say that it's Iron Man that was the anchor being, because but they're talking about it from a meta standpoint. They're literally like, since Iron Man died in Endgame, every movie and show has been terrible. So he's really like the anchor being of the MCU. Like, no, they're not gonna do that. It wouldn't make any sense, and because they would have brought that up in some movie a while ago in the TVA, that Iron Man had died and it had ruined things, but they didn't, because it's not a thing. But like I said, there's a couple characters it could fucking be. It could be, and this is one of the things that I put out there, it could easily be Steve Rogers. Like, Steve Rogers isn't dead. And there is something interesting about that concept, and we've all kind of assumed that if Chris Evans wanted to come back, like, they kind of already have a built-in way for him to get his youth back and be young Steve again. So I would be cool with it being Steve Rogers. He's old. He's an old Cap, but since he's got that super soldier serum in him, homie's gonna live to like 130. Let's be real. As long as he don't have to do nothing crazy, homie's gonna live to like 130, 135, something like that. So you can have him in the background for however long you want to without having to use him again. But yeah, like, it could easily be Steve Rogers. But from a storytelling perspective, Tom Holland's Spider-Man should be the anchor being. It just makes sense. It just makes sense. He has such a huge connection / an emotional attachment to the main bad guy of the saga. He is such a big popular. He is such a huge character. He's a sure enough bad. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is one of the few. I mean, there's a couple others, but he is one of the few bona fide can't miss heavy hitter stars that the MCU has. Now they don't have them all the time, but he's one of the few bona fide stars that the MCU has that they can have him show up and he can get the same type of numbers and get the same type of reactions that Iron Man once got when he would show up in things. So, like, I don't know if they got to work some shit out with Sony or not, but if I was choosing the anchor being of the MCU, I would have it be Spider-Man. You know, we all think this is going to all wrap up anyways, but I would have it be Spider-Man. Anyways, thank you guys for watching the Common Grand Movie Show. Please remember to like and subscribe and comment below and let me know. Who do you think is the MCU main timeline anchor being? They set it up. Who is it going to be? You know they're going to have one. You know they're going to answer it. I just got a feeling about this one. Comment below. See you guys.